Welcome to Ecommerce Revamped, where we break down the hottest trends, insider tips, and strategies shaping the future of e-commerce. Powered by Miva, the engine behind seamless online stores. Now here's your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Ecommerce Revamped. I'm Rob Stanley, your host. And today we've got a really special one. This is a very interesting subject. A lot of people ignore this, and that's their branding regarding your product or maybe your company, depending on if you're a product or a service. And I've had the pleasure of actually going on a really cool e-commerce cruise with this person. I've been in London with this person, and I'm going to bring into the studio here Lai from ME Brands. Hi, Kitty. How are you?
Hi, Rob. It's good to see you again.
Great to see you too. So just to let everybody know what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about how to build an e-commerce brand customers trust. And that's kind of a big feat. And I think a lot of people ignore it. That's why I wanted Kitty to come on the podcast, because I've seen Kitty give these amazing presentations on all kinds of things regarding branding, from packaging to logos to just your presence in general. So why don't we kick this off with what key elements define an e-commerce brand? That's kind of a big question, but why don't you help us out?
Yeah, so the key things to sort of build your e-commerce brand is having actually a clear mission. So, and having a unique visual identity and consistent messaging with a strong brand experience. And it's all about what the customer is going to remember and what they're going to experience. So having a clear mission for your brand, you know what you're all about. If you don't know what your mission is, neither will your customer. So it's really clear to define what you're all about and what your brand is working towards. And again, the visual identity, it's letting the customer recognize and memorize what your brand is, and if they don't recognize an image or the logo or the colors, then it's really hard for the customer to know whether you're a professional brand or or whether you're going to be around for a while, and it's really understanding that and making sure that those elements are in place. So mission, a clear mission, a visual identity, consistent messaging, and a strong brand experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to cover into those a little bit more. And I'm glad you brought those up, because I think those are the key topics that are key things people should be doing. So let's start with, let's just kind of roll through this from the beginning. When some of these brands are just starting to get started, what are some of the common mistakes that they make regarding branding, especially in the e-commerce world?
Right. So there's a lot of mistakes that go wrong in the e-commerce world, and the main thing is inconsistency. So when your message is inconsistent, your logo is inconsistent. I see a lot of brands with logos on their website, on the social media, then on the packaging, it's completely different. So you really need to make sure that you hone down on your branding as well. So weak messaging is another thing. If you're targeting a particular audience and you're not talking to them in the right tone of voice or the right way to sort of engage with them, then that's also a mistake as well. And I know a lot of brands do get that wrong. And again, copying competitors, why would you want to do that? So that is a mistake. Trying to be like another brand, it's like, well, what is your mission? Go back to your mission. What is it actually you're trying to do? And also not understanding your target audience. So there are a lot of brands that launch their brand and think, well, I'm going to sell my product to everyone. And if you don't niche down and know who your target audience is, it's really hard to get that messaging. It's hard to be consistent. And, again, weak messaging. So those are the things that sellers do get wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. And, I've built brand kits myself, and definitely I'll sometimes copy the color scheme they're using, but I'll go a whole different direction with, say logos and everything, make sure it's consistent, just because sometimes I like the color scheme that they have, which, I'm sure they spend a lot of money getting a color scheme, some of these big brands. So why not take advantage of it? Right. So Absolutely. Speaking of colors, let's talk a little bit, and you mentioned this a little earlier. Let's talk a bit about like colors and visuals and how they help the brand's perception, and maybe cover a little bit on what colors are maybe best in the e-commerce world.
Yeah, so, colors evoke emotions, and it's all about, there's a lot of psychology around that, actually. So it's not about choosing your favorite color, but there is a lot of different tones and colors you can use for a particular brand. And, for example, the blacks and the whites and the grays and the muted colors are more premium end kind of for brands like that. But when it comes to e-commerce, it really depends on your brand. So, for example, if you have a baby product, you might a lot of people use the baby blues, the baby pinks, but it doesn't mean you can go slightly off and use warm grays and warm mints and lilacs as well. It really depends on what your brand is. And if you want to be a bit more fun loving kind of baby brand, then you can look at different colors. It doesn't mean you can't go neon either. But, brands, the colors are there to be recognized. And McDonald's, for example, they use red and yellow, and that actually stimulates hunger and appetite. So that's why they've actually used that, because there is a psychology behind that. So you'll see a lot of fast food brands using reds and yellows in their branding. And also Tiffany & Co., they use a particular blue. Their signature blue conveys luxury and exclusivity. So different brands will use different colors, and it is well thought through. It's not just, I'm just going to pick up color from the palette. And, there are an array of Pantones that I have. I have these swatches that come out of my ears, actually, because there's so many blues, there's so many reds, and it's not just picking the one you think, I quite like that one. So it's about recognition. So using the colors is important, and also through to the typography as well.
Yeah, I love how you brought up the baby brands, because my feeling is that, if you have a baby product that's both for a boy or a girl, you're going to want your kind of brand to be something more neutral. I loved you said like a mint green. That'd be interesting, actually, depending on, I guess, what you're selling. But I love that. And it's such great suggestions there. And I've heard that too, by the way, on the McDonald's thing with the red and the yellow making people hungry. Yeah. And I always think black as luxury. Like black to me is like a luxury type color, at least in my experience. You're the expert here, but let's talk a little bit about, some of these brands, maybe smaller brands in the e-commerce space. And, how can small brands compete with big ones via like a branding? Is branding going to make or break them, or is there other parts to it?
Well, I think it's about focusing on authenticity, basically, for your brand, firstly. And then it's about the storytelling as well. So it is, again, thinking about your mission, about the story, about what is your brand all about, and where do you want to take your customer? It's about that experience again. And I say niche audience as well. So focus on a niche audience rather than mass appeal, because again, if you're not honing down, then, especially for smaller brands, you need to start with an audience in mind and then go from there. And again, being authentic, because that's all what it's all about, because people buy buy brands. So it's really important that you do start small and forget about the big boys. You will get there if you've got that storytelling, you've got that engagement, and they will come. It's about that brand experience that you want your customers to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So I've kind of done e-commerce many years, and I remember reading a lot of articles when it came to like checkout, or the checkout button specifically. And, they were talking about like a reds, the orange, and the greens, right? Like those were kind of the three colors that would play off of emotions or psychological triggers to get sometimes people to like click on it to actually buy items. Yeah. So I'm not gonna say besides those colors, but what are some of the like psychological triggers do successful brands use that kind of sway people into either wanting the item or buying the item?
Yeah, well, I think we're all familiar with this. Everyone watching, scarcity. So when it comes to things like limited editions or sales and things that are going to go, people will want to buy it. So those are the psychological triggers. And I know a lot of websites have countdowns when you're putting things in a basket, then it starts counting down, and it's like, it's quite psychological, and it's stressful as well. But that, brands do that to actually make more sales as well. Also, social proof. So having reviews and testimonials, they do help a lot as well. So that, again, psychologically, someone said that's really good, I want to have that experience as well. So, think about that when you've got reviews and testimonials, and really sort of make the most of that as well when you have it on your website or on your listings and over social media as well. And again, the last thing is emotional storytelling. Create a great story. It's all about what the brand is all about and where you want to take them again. So, those are the sort of triggers. And if you can connect with your customer and engage with them in a particular way, they want to stick with you for a while, and they want to be on that journey with you as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love to go read about certain, smaller companies I'm buying for, and kind of what their backstory is, and, what got them to that point. Of course, I've been in this e-commerce world a long time. So, I love just kind of hearing about their journey and how they're successful now and how, they got there and even just what the product's about. Like if I'm buying a certain product, it's like, what kind of came up with that? How'd they come up with the idea? How did they, fall into it? Or maybe somebody helped them with it. So there's great stories out there. And I love that. I love being able to attach that story to the product that has more meaning, I think, when I'm either using it or wearing it, depending on what the product is. So listen, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk to Kitty a little bit about how does branding influence conversion rates? And that is a big subject. And that's going to be one that people are going to want to hold on and listen to. So we'll be back right after this commercial break.
Need an e-commerce platform that's as ambitious as you are? Miva empowers your business with seamless design, top-tier features, and the flexibility to scale. For serious growth and a better online experience, it's got to be Miva. Visit miva.com/podcast and start building success today.
Yeah, so head on over to miva.com/podcast. We have lots of free downloadables, how-tos, tips, all kinds of really cool ebook type stuff over there. So be sure to check that out. So once again, I'm on with Kitty from ME Brand, and we're talking about how to build an e-commerce brand customers trust. And just before the break, I gave a kind of an interesting question we're going to throw to Kitty here, and that is, how does branding influence conversion rate? Kitty, tell us how it influences it.
So, right. So a cohesive professional brand builds credibility and increases perceived value. So that's going to lead to higher sales. So, for example, Apple's minimalist packaging and branding, that creates a premium perception. So, they can justify higher prices as well. And that will increase customer trust as well. So people trust them. They love the product. They know the story. And again, it's all about the perceived value. And, I think being consistent, cohesive across every touch point as well, whatever you do with branding, the packaging, and the social media, the marketing, it all sort of impacts, everything, the conversion rate. So I think definitely think about the cohesive professional credibility, the perceived value as well. And, I think that will definitely help customers buy into your brand.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious. You've probably seen this happen. When it comes to rebranding, have you seen that to be a more positive thing or a negative thing as far as like their sales maybe, or the way that they're seen? And then also let's maybe take that one step further as far as like an older company rebranding versus somebody who maybe is, hasn't quite established a brand. What have you seen when it comes to rebranding?
Well, my views rebranding, I think all brands should actually have a bit of a brand audit after a couple of years, because things tire, things move on, people evolve, and packaging evolves and design evolves, so it's going back to that mission and the vision that you have in place. Are you on track? If you are, that's fine. But, sometimes brands do need a bit of a refresh, whether it's a tweak on the colorway, whether it's a tweak on the logo. And I generally don't say rebrand. I kind of say a bit of a refresh, or, so it's kind of tweaking things. You're not changing everything. You're not changing your target audience, but, it's being clear to your customer as well if you are changing certain things and actually having a rebrand. Rebranding is thinking the whole thing all over again. So I would say you're not having a rebrand. You're having a bit of a refresh.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I definitely appreciate you responding to that, because that could get, I love the refresh word, by the way. So that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about, so we already, I think, covered this a little bit. I'd like to dive a little deeper into this though. And that's regarding brands maintaining that consistency across platforms. And I'd like you to touch a little bit on packaging. Because I think that's a big subject that people just kind of brown box, move on type of thing. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so having packaging consistent across different platforms, I think, well, firstly, it's about the product and whether you need packaging or not. And again, it depends on your product. So actually, Rob, I don't have any problem about brown packaging, because actually you can make that look really nice. So it really depends. If you have a brown packaging, you can make it, you can print on the brown box, you can actually have stickers, you can dress it up in a particular way that it does no longer looks basic or boring. And I think there's so many things you can do. And I think the perception is from customers is that, while it's a brown box, it's boring. There's not much branding to it, but you can do more to it. So again, go back to the storytelling, the messaging. Can you create some sort of message on the box? Can you create something inside the box? When you open it, it might be brown on the outside, but inside, wow, it's like red and glowing on the inside, and it's the unboxing side of things. So you might want to create a surprise, but again, it's keeping everything consistent across all touch points. So whether you are in an Amazon store or you're on a Shopify, you're sending out from a third party logistic company, you have to make sure that the branding's there and everything's consistent. And what I generally do actually is create an overview board. This is getting a bit technical, but I create an overview board of all the products I have, and then the packaging I have, the swing tickets, the bags, and everything. And you can see everything that does it gel. And generally I do that for brand audits for clients. Actually, I put everything on a page or quite a few pages, and I look at their websites, their emailers, their social media, and is everything consistent? And that has to go all the way through to the packaging, even if it's a brown box. So I've kind of gone off on a tangent, Rob. So I hope I've answered part of your question.
No, you did, and that's great, because I remember you giving this presentation this one time. It was a little while back, and I may not get it exactly right, so help me out with it. But we're basically talking about how it was somebody that took a box that their product arrived in, and I think it was something about they had on the box itself the different things you can make out, like a cardboard airplane, or it could be made into a dinosaur. And I think they even had little dotted lines where somebody could cut out something out of it. Does that kind of ring a bell? I thought that was really cute, the way that was done.
It was for the brand Don't Give a Crap. So it's toilet roll. They were selling eco-friendly toilet rolls made from bamboo, and basically they had the whole messaging on the box that, give it to your kid, they can make it into a house. Give it to your cat, that can be a little scratch box. And it was reusing the box in a particular way, and it was just a brown box, but it was finding interesting ways to make that brown box still have another use and another purpose, whether it's just giving it to the cat or the dog to scratch up, but it's still another use. So you don't want to just throw packaging away, so give it another purpose. And if you can, with packaging, create something that a customer can keep.
That's so creative. I love that. And I remember, it stuck in my head, even from, it's been probably a good year and a half at least since I heard that story or saw that presentation. And that's so cool. That is so cool. Kitty, could you maybe also you just kind of shared with us, I don't know if it was a brand you worked with, but could you share maybe a brand you worked with and kind of like a success they've had? Doesn't necessarily have to be packaging, just something that basically you made some suggestions, they made some changes, and it really worked for them.
Right. I don't think I should say their name, should I?
No, you don't have to.
No, they're actually Amazon sellers, and you would have probably met them on one of the cruise ships, actually. But I've been working with them for the last 2 years, and they've got an outdoor brand, and they do a lot of different kind of outdoory things. And I created a lot their packaging for them, so swing tickets, the box packaging, and they decided to go with SIOC packaging, which is ship in own container. So that was an Amazon thing that they were bringing out, and I've created that for them to have their own branding, that they don't have to buy the Amazon box, and their box goes in Amazon box and that gets shipped out. So they get shipped directly from Amazon in their own packaging. But they said literally they've gone from, they're 7-figure sellers and they're going up to 8 figures very soon. But they said the packaging helped a lot from what I did for them. So there's quite a few different products, and I did a lot of other things with them, not just the packaging. So it's helping them grow the brand a bit and giving them a lot of consulting as well. So seeing that is really and hearing that is actually really nice, because it makes me feel actually I've done something that I really enjoy as well.
That's great, and I know who that is. So they're good people. So yes, absolutely. So Kitty, let's talk a little. We've been talking a bit about packaging, which is super important. But I want it for some of the people that are on the Miva platform, or let's say they're off Amazon. Let's talk a little bit about, and we started with this a little on the actual website. What are some of the quick wins that they could do, or quick changes they could do to get a quick win? Is it something as simple as changing the color of the buy button, or just making sure the whole website is, cohesive with their color scheme? What have you seen?
Right. So there's a few things when it comes to color scheme. people get really confused when you've got brand guidelines and you got your brand color palette. People think that color palette has to go across everything, and it doesn't. That is just your brand, your logo, your brand, your company. That is what that encompasses. But you can have secondary palettes of colors and third palettes of colors. But when it comes to marketing, you don't have to stick to that. As long as the logo and everything else is consistent, it doesn't have to be on the website. I mean, parts of it does have to be consistent. So yeah, the main colors. But I would say for the website, again, make sure that logo is correct, because I see it so many times. It's a different logo to what you've got in your social media or on your packaging. So really make sure that you hone down and lock down 2 or 3 logos. So the primary logo, secondary logo, maybe you have one that's horizontal or one that's stacked. So you have to, and maybe a brand mark as well. But I think for websites in particular, if you want to buy something and click make it green is the color. So that's almost like a go green or orange. So yeah.
I love that. That you hit that on the nose like perfectly. So obviously last company I worked for, we went through a big rebranding. And that was one thing I learned was I was always like, there's just the primary set of, let's call it 5 to 6 colors.
Yeah.
But then they were like, no, there's like a secondary set and even a third set, and they're complementary. And, we're going to use these for the logo, but on the website, we'll use these. And it was very interesting to learn. Especially, being part of going through a whole rebrand process like that with an actual professional company that rebrands and everything.
Yeah.
It just blew me away. It absolutely blew me away on that. So, let me ask this, Kitty, and we'll just I want to go from this last question, and then I want you to talk a little bit more about Me Brand. But, what kind of things, I'm sorry, it was taglines. I wanted to talk a little bit about taglines. So some companies have taglines, some don't, so having a tagline, is that what makes a brand memorable, or is it the coloring? Talk a little bit more about the taglines and whether you need one or not, and whether you should have one.
Depends on the brand again. But I say, taglines are memorable, but that's not what makes a brand. That is part of the thing that makes a brand. So if it is catchy, then yeah, that does make part of the brand. But the colors again, and the logo, and your messaging and the experience, that's what makes a brand as well. So it's not just one element. So when you come to taglines, it's a nice to have. And if it does work with your brand and you use it on everything and it's catchy and you use it on social media and marketing and, then that's fine. But not every product or brand needs a tagline. I think it's a nice to have. So don't get stuck on, I have to have a tagline, because you don't really. That's my advice.
I love it, because, I've seen there's so many companies, big companies out there. They'll make a commercial and people almost associate that commercial, like say a tag within the commercial is now branded to them, right? Like, and I'm not going to give a bunch of examples because we're not giving free plugs here, but there's a couple of them out there. And, I almost feel like you get too sucked into a tagline, and it could just, could almost hurt your brand a little bit, because you're like stuck with that. Whereas, some of these ones that do commercials, or if you're doing, let's say in this case of e-commerce sellers, maybe you're putting up a funny ad on Google or something like that, but it's something you could change, and hopefully one will stick, and maybe it really takes off. And that's, I think, is more, you want to be able to adjust those directions as you go. So Kitty, what? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yeah. I think it's dependent on the industry as well. So if you're a more commercial kind of a corporate industry, then you're trying to battle with all the same companies. So I think that's where it works, or automobiles as well. That's where it works. You need to have something. So it doesn't work for all products, but certain industries do need taglines, but not for all.
Great answer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Me Brand, how you got started, what brought you into this industry, and how people get a hold of you?
I was going to say, you don't have all day, do you?
We have a while. Go ahead.
No. So my background is in graphic design. I went to university, and I came out fresh from university wanting to do graphic design. And I ended up in a design agency in London, and London is where I wanted to work. And then I ended up, fast forward, in a retail brand called Ted Baker. So I actually worked as a designer all the way up to managing 8 designers in the team. So we opened stores globally. We did all the marketing campaigns, in-store design, graphics, packaging, anything with the name Ted Baker would come through me. I'd have to sign it off, even if it was a button or a zip pull, something random like that. So we would create the brand guidelines for them. And then I moved onto that after 10 years to another brand called Cath Kidston. So that again was day one. I went in the warehouse, looked at everything, all the product. No, nothing's consistent. And that drove me crazy because I'm quite OCD about design and consistency. So we rebranded for Cath Kidston, and, you know, with the logo you see today and all the things you see on bags, and the store, we open stores as well everywhere in the UK. I see my designs around everywhere, and I was there to do a job and to actually create all the packaging for her as well. And I subsequently worked with Apple actually whilst I was working with Cath Kidston. So we had a lot of products that had to go into Apple stores. So I worked with the Apple teams in terms of getting things consistent and making sure that guidelines would work with them. And then fast forward, I did an Amazon course and decided to sell on Amazon. So I do actually understand about Amazon. I launched an organic baby brand products. And I no longer do that because I actually love designing, and it was the whole sourcing and the whole creating of a product and launching was what excites me. And so that's what I do now. So I've been doing Me Brand for the last 6-7 years, and helping online businesses and commercial businesses as well, on their branding, packaging. So lots of things, as well as I do photo shoots and art direct as well, but my main bread and butter is graphic design for packaging and branding. So yeah, that's
Excellent.
what we are.
Excellent. Yeah. And so Kitty, why don't you tell everybody, if anybody's interested in reaching out to you, or they want to learn more about you, or get a hold of you, and maybe for some design advice or packaging advice, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can reach out on email. It's info@mebranddesign.com, or the website mebranddesign.com, and you will find me there. And if you want to find us on social media, the links are on the actual website as well.
Absolutely. So for those who are listening, Me Brand Design. So it's MEBRANDDESIGN.com, mebranddesign.com. So be sure to head on over there. And then it's info@mebranddesign.com if you want to email Kitty. Kitty, always great having you on. I know we could have went on a lot longer. Let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff that you and I could definitely cover, but I want everybody to just get kind of the tip of the iceberg of what Kitty is capable of doing, what she's done, how she understands the e-commerce industry, packaging, branding, just absolutely amazing at what she does, and always enjoy having her on. And thank you, Kitty, so much for coming on, and I appreciate you being on the podcast like always. And everybody, please reach out to mebranddesign.com and check it out. And Kitty, thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Oh, thank you so much, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Ecommerce Revamped. Ready to take your e-commerce business to the next level? Visit Miva.com for the tools to build seamless online stores and unforgettable customer experiences. Until next time, keep your cards full and your